It's interesting that you say that. I had a talk with one of my friends who wants to do polygyny, but his wife is like, right? And she's not moving on it. And now he didn't try to guilt trip her into it, but he expressed it to me and how bothered he was.
That's immature at best. Okay. So one, that's not something that's common where all of a sudden the whole community is like, well, why don't you just marry? He's a good brother. And, oh, you should really practice polygyny. Now, polygyny in the Muslim community, similar to outside the Muslim community, is something that's ostracized. It's looked down upon and everything else. That's what's more common. So if a sister says no, other sisters will jump right back with it. That's right, girl. You know, you're right. You shouldn't be blah, blah, blah. You can find your own whole man. Whatever. They'll come with that in a minute. So that support group is a whole lot bigger than a support group like, girl, you know you should go ahead and be a second or third or fourth wife. That's not in reality. Why do men do that? Men try all kinds of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't matter whether you're in polygyny, you're not in polygyny. Men can manipulate and do just as women can manipulate and do as well. So usually that's because that's somebody who hasn't learned how to communicate effectively, or they're stuck on somebody who's not interested in it, which means to move on. You know what I'm saying? You have the freedom. Islam gives you have the freedom to choose whether or not. You know what I'm saying? Divorce is an option. That's not necessarily the first choice, but it is an option and it's real and it's something that's allowed for Muslims. So, you know, and if you're not interested in somebody, clearly you have to have consent in order to get married. Islam, you've been talking about that over 1,400 years ago. So, yeah,
it's interesting that you say that. I had a talk with one of my friends who wants to do polygyny, but his wife is like, right? And she's not moving on it. And now he didn't try to guilt trip her into it, but he expressed it to me and how bothered he was. Let me know if I overstep my boundaries. I told him this. I said, look, if this is something you feel like you really need to do, then you might as well, in the relationship, if that's something that she cannot do, she's telling you, no way, don't talk to me about it again, and you're saying you have to do this, right? Then that is, for me, a sign of that you are not compatible. And maybe you should find, you don't have children. This couple doesn't have children. Maybe before you do, maybe she should find somebody compatible for herself, and he should find somebody compatible for himself. I just think that that's a better option than trying to, and I think unfortunately, a lot of men do try to guilt trip women to it. And I think that's just a better way to go about it. What do you think about that? Do you think somebody should end it, or do you think they should just keep trying to sell it?
Again, it depends on their personal circumstances. Like you mentioned, in this situation, there are no babies and stuff involved, so there's no other collateral damage, if you will, that would necessarily happen if there were children involved. But I let brothers know in particular, there are a few different things. You got to weigh stuff. You have to weigh things, okay? Because either you can say, okay, well, she doesn't want this, and I'm waiting on her permission. And if I don't get her permission, then I'm going to be married to her without, practicing polygyny. And then I may build resentment in myself where our marriage isn't going to go good because of resentment, even though she might be great, do all other stuff and everything else for marriage. But because of this situation, that resentment stuff still built on the heart. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they have to weigh whether or not that's more important to say, okay, look, or just forget the goal. Like, all right, I don't want to do that. I'm going to continue here. This is good enough and I'm good. Or is there resentment that's going to build? You know what I'm saying? If so, then you need to make a decision. You got to be a man. We have to make those tough decisions. And in being a man, you have to stand in the uncomfortable conversations. You have to recognize that there's challenges that you're going to have to be able to deal with. You're the leader. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to be the one that's leading. Mm-hmm. All right. So you may not necessarily need your wife's permission to do something, but it's best practice is to be able to communicate enough to that point. Now, if you are a good guy, if you're a good dude, and you're providing and doing what you do so far as the marriage and everything goes, then it's more likely that a person will be more understanding. But at the same time, it's also more likely that stuff is going so good, you don't want to share that time anyway. Mm. You know what I'm saying? So it's a double-edged sword. But in that situation, no, I can see that advice. But he got to weigh it out. You know, how important is it for him? If he's going to do that and she's adamantly against it, not open to it, it could be over time. She sees how he is, understands it, and is willing to go ahead and work from that perspective. That could be over time where, you, like you said, you can try to keep selling it, but he has to become more being able to deal with it emotionally, able to deal with it, communicate the feelings and understand, or allow that resentment to grow. If that's the case.
Most definitely.
You know, so, but he got to determine that, you know?
So another question, and it says, this is for the queens. Do you love your sister wife? And if so, how?
How do you love me, Nyla?
So cute. I never heard that. And if so, how part? That was that ain't no joke. Shoot. I mean,
we absolutely do love each other.
My God.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that we talk a lot about giving yourself permission to do the things that you want to do and that are helpful and healthy for your family. So I thought to myself, I said, now, what would prevent me from loving her outside of Coach Nazir? You know, would I stop myself from loving a sister that wasn't married to him? No, I wouldn't. So I said, well, why would I stop myself now? Because it is me, it's myself, it is moi that would be stopping myself from doing so. Yeah. Just very, very quickly, after my co-wife answers this, I want to give a little fun fact, but I'm going to let her say why she's not.
I didn't love her. I just love me some her, girl. No, I mean, but I always did. The thing is, just her being, you know, even before I even thought of polygyny, before I even knew that was even going to be a part, you know, of my life. You know, I actually knew her. Gosh, my throat is really bad, guys. It's not Corona.
Right.
Disclaimer.
She gonna get up COVID.
But I saw her, and it's funny because people ask when I talk, like, oh, you know, I talk about her a lot, and I'm like, oh yeah, when you meet her, you'll love her. Everybody do. Like that's my thing. I'm like, when you meet her, you're gonna love her. Everybody do. So this was not even a thing of, you know, not loving her or anything like that, but how and why or whatever. I don't know if it's the why or the how, but it's one thing. She's my sister in Islam.
Yeah.
That's first and foremost. Another thing is that, you know, she's my sister. You know, my thing is I always want for women, you know, I do want for women, my sisters, what I want for myself. I love peace. Yes, I love happiness. Does. I love that stuff. Talk, yeah. So I'm like that, period, with women in general. But just her personality and just the love and the support and everything. And just we gel. It's really difficult to even just explain how. Just alhamdulillah, it is that way. And she has a good spirit. We mesh. You know, our energies.
See, I love her, but I don't love everybody. So she brings the happy, you know, and people will make that distinction between us. They'll be like, oh no, that wasn't Fatimah, that was Nyla. She smiled, you know, and I'll usually have my shades on and look like the Terminator, and people are like, ooh, she don't like people. And it's not true, but I'm very protective over who I like. But when I start loving someone, I'm completely loyal to them, and I love them very hard, you know? So it's no different for me. And it wasn't always this way. Like I wasn't always like loving my co-wife. So we like to be very honest about our journey. But then I had to go one day, I'm like, why don't you love her? You know, like you should. And then my inner me said, because of you, you know, because you won't let yourself do it. You're hard-headed. One thing about me, I'm an ENFP, and the fun fact is that INTJs and ENFPs do pretty well in marriage because we know how to stay out of each other's way. But the natural best friend of an ENFP is an INFJ, which is my co-wife. So, you know, it's so interesting how we know as Muslims that Allah doesn't give you more than you can handle. but we do have to do our work toward
Most
that, toward the solutions that he has for us at the end if we do our work. So I'm like, who would have thought that I'd be sitting in between or in the same family with the two personality types on the whole planet that I get along with most you know, definitely. Our husband and my co-wife. So
choose
more in my luggage.
And that's truly amazing. And you know, it's funny because this podcast was only supposed to be an hour long. I don't know why I thought that it could only be an hour long, but because I'm getting all these questions because these messages are just running in. It's funny. A lot of people are direct messaging, so I guess people don't want to publicly ask. I don't know.
Yeah. Sure.
So I won't disclose any names. I'll just read off these questions. So someone said, let me read this first before I say it to him. Harder than it was it except your husband. Okay. Ask the first wife. How hard, if any at all, was it for you to accept your husband bringing in another wife to your family? Question.
Well, it was hard because there's so many questions that you have that don't have answers. And sometimes he didn't have the answers to the questions that I had because we all were trying to figure it out and we didn't have resources. So I had to think about it as him being a friend of mine versus being my husband. And I had to say, well, what support does he have in this situation? That, of course, he placed himself in, but just because we place ourselves in situations, it doesn't mean we have it all figured out. You know, life is much about being in this life and figuring out things as we go, growth. You know, there's a journey here. So for me to assume that he had everything figured out was wrong with me. And I had to look at it differently and remove my label as wife and say, if it were me, and I didn't have resources, then what would I look like in this situation? So it was much to do about placing myself in his shoes. That doesn't mean I was happy with him. It just means I had to become more understanding of him in the position that he was in. People always like to pit me and Coach Nyla against each other in the internet. And I've had people do it, not to my face, because it takes a lot to do that, but I'd hear it offhand and compare how many has children and who has daughters versus sons. And I said, well, he got more children than all of us, than me and her. He got 10. So he won that. So that when people make these comments, I said, what is the purpose of that? Is that to help my family or help our husband or help my co-wife or help our children? So it's a lot of weighing. And I didn't know. I was not happy, but that didn't mean I had to stay in that headspace.
Yeah.
Because if I wanted to heal, it's because I wanted to. It would sometimes if we can't, people don't prompt us. We got to prompt ourselves and do our work and grow and look at our husbands as not just, oh, he's my husband. He's not your anything. He's married to you, but he belongs to his Lord. You get that understanding? Because if he was my husband, if he was my possession, then I could have stopped him or make him do what I want him to do. And I don't have that power. And I don't want that power.
The interesting part of that answer was how you brought in friendship and how you looked outside of yourself and to like a chord that I hear a lot of people who have, I used to go around talking to people who've been married like for long periods of time. And a lot of them bring up friendship. And so it's just very interesting because me and my wife started off as best friends before we never even thought we were going to be together, honestly. We didn't even, I thought that she was just, as weird as it sounds, I thought that she was just too much of a goody two-shoe when I was in college. I was not into that, and she thought I was just too wild. So, you know, we didn't ever think, but our friendship, when things don't go the way things are planned, our friendship is normally what keeps us tied together and understand each other. So that's very powerful. You said that. Another question it's like my brother here gets the longest questions. Like, his questions are like, these giant. So ask my question. ASC, is that assalamu alaikum? Okay. Never heard it put that way. Okay. My question is for Coach Nazir. I agree a man does have to weigh whether polygyny is worth ending the marriage he is currently in. However, if it is to the point where the man needs to end the marriage, I feel like couples should definitely talk about this prior to getting married. Nowadays, many couples are either including no polygyny in their contract or talk about this during premarital counseling to avoid being in a stalemate situation later on.
Yeah, I agree. Now, here's the deal. That's if you have that access to begin with. For example, when Coach Fatimah and I got married, I was 19 years old. We didn't know anything about other stuff in marriage contracts. I had no idea, nothing. I'm like trying to get married for the first time and do what's right. So in our situation, that wasn't even the case. Now, when it comes to other stuff, like I'm the wali or the guardian for 5 daughters. So the one daughter right now I'm negotiating with and stuff like that, her potential husband said he's not interested in really practicing polygyny. Well, we're putting that in the contract. Not that he can't do it, because we can't make anything forbidden that God allowed, period. Mm-hmm. But we do have it in the contract where should he want to do that, then he must consult with her and get her permission first, or else he annuls this marriage. Mm. So that's wise, just to protect her rights in that way. Okay, so it is wise to do so in premarital counseling, but we don't come from a background of being Muslims. We're the only Muslims in our family. We birthed the rest of them. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So we didn't have that background. So it's good to do that. Now we can do that. As our children are really first generation born into Islam and our culture, but it's always best to do that in the contract. But you have to work what you got.
And I think that's a powerful thing of what you all are doing is the fact, like, Dad, we didn't have that. So it's like I said, I'm a history teacher, so I appreciate that type of mindset. Like, I only will teach Black kids because the reason why I'm doing it is because I didn't get it. So I want to make sure they got it. So I see like that kind of that energy. Like, I didn't have all these resources, all this stuff. I didn't have somebody to talk me through. And so let me go ahead and be that for someone who's in my situation.
Indeed. I mean, we had this course, for example, right? It's called Relationship Mastery Inner Circle. It's a monthly course where we go live and answer questions, have worksheets, and we really go deep that our members access in the membership area, right? Mm-hmm. And for premarital counseling, that's required. Like, my daughter is going through that right now, and my potential son-in-law, and before we conduct the marriage, they're going through it right now. You know what I'm saying? That's like required stuff. And even though we discussed polygyny and stuff, the main thing is about personal growth and development in your marriages. So that's what's core and what's key. Like, one of my daughters, she wants to be married in polygyny. She wants to have her husband have 4 wives, which is a tall order because most have 2 that practice polygyny. But she wants them to have 4. All right, she's adamant about that and stuff like that. And we'll see when the time comes. But, so I have some that's like, nah, I don't really want to practice that. I'm already too much to handle. Then you have another one saying, I want them to have 4 because I appreciate my time. They're different personality types. Mm-hmm. But it's important to have the resources, like I said, because with us, we know it's not about the resources, it's about your resourcefulness. So we had to figure it out. But if we have the ability to figure it out and empower other people at the same time, then you can't lose. We know that in Islam, the one who's the most beneficial to most people is the one who's most appreciated by the Creator.
Most definitely. So this question right here is anyone can answer. So what do you tell the I guess they didn't go into detail, but I'm gonna split it into 2. So what do you tell the children who were born into, if any, but who were born into a monogamous relationship before the polygynous relationship? What do you tell them to get them to understand? And then also, what do you tell the children when they get old enough to look at, because though polygyny used to be a norm, it is definitely not a norm today. So when they look at TV, other families, and look at your own, what do you tell them about their family and polygyny?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, well, the way, like, my 2 oldest, I had from one was a previous relationship before Islam, and one was from a previous marriage, which is monogamy. And but the way I think I framed the stuff with them is I was just being open and honest. So they knew what polygyny entailed. They, for the most part, well, at least what I knew, all the stuff that I knew it entailed. Like I said, we have to be the change. So we actually, when it comes to practicing, it's definitely different than the, basic stuff that we had, the theory that we had at first. However, I believe in, family. Like, this is your family. This is, so my children, they already saw their bonus siblings as their brothers and sisters. They already seen this type of thing when it came to just marriage in particular. It's like, okay, this is the person who you're going to have to, not only this is my husband, but this is also, your bonus dad and the person who is going, the imam of the household, the amir, the leader. You're going to have to now take direction from this person, not only me anymore, but from another person. Also in polygyny, now not only from, our husband, but from your bonus mom as well. Because when you go to her house, when she's telling you these different things. So these are things that they were prepared for. Yeah, because these were things that I was intentional about preparing them for. It's like, this is what it's going to possibly look like I stated earlier about the marriage mission statement. Even when it comes to dealing with children, you have to have the what you want it to look like. What do you want your family structure to look like? What do you want? If you want to win and you want to grow, you want to make sure everybody is on the same page. They're not going to always agree. They're kids. They don't know what they want. I mean, sometimes they do, but they don't know when it comes to adult issues and adult situations. So you don't put them in that. However, when it comes to things that's going to affect them and possibly infect them, if it's something in a negative way, you want to prepare them for it. So my thing is, they knew up front. It wasn't nothing to be hidden. It wasn't nothing to be secretive to. So this is normal for them. But they also know of other relationships that are not polygynous and other marriages that are not polygynous. And that's also, they saw that in their lives. So that's normal for them too. So they do have the choice, but they have, like Coach Nyla was talking about, one, my bonus baby, is about to get married. She don't want, she don't want to be in polygyny. Another one, she does, because we equip them on what it looks like and what it could possibly be. So now they have a choice of whether or not they want to practice it or they don't want to practice it.
Most definitely. Okay. The next question, again, anybody can answer this. I'm gonna unpack it a little bit. Because for the viewers who do not know, so today the norm is monogamy. Okay, that is the norm in the United States. Let's just speak of the United States. That's the norm in the United States. But because it's been a norm so long, I think people do not know the history of polygyny and monogamy, and doesn't necessarily know that monogamy for the past, I would say 300 to 400 years has been has risen due to colonialism and slavery. But to get to this person's question, I just had to unload all that. They wanted to ask, what is more natural? And I'll let you all answer this: polygyny or monogamy? That's why I did all the unloading first.
Go ahead.
I had to think about this before. And I thought about the men that were in my family: my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather. And I noticed this pattern of them wanting more than one wife or more than one woman in their lives. And I said, why are they so weird? Why do they want all that drama? I had to understand that there was a desire there in the men in my family. And then I understood that to be something normal to them. polygyny being something normal in their mind, but monogamy being something normal in the minds of the women that they were married to.
Mm.
But they had this capacity, and I learned that men compartmentalize different areas of their life. So women, my co-wife and I have ran into this many times where women go, how do you not think about what they're doing? Men are different with their thoughts. If they're with this wife, they don't have 8 million different scenarios of what might be going on with the other wife at the house right now. They're here, So to try to compare their desire for polygyny, the men that were in my family, the men that were in my life day to day, and try to make them think with this mind for simply and exclusively monogamy, it was like something they weren't able to do. And I was trying to make sense of that. Now, I looked at the conditioning of our society and the thinking that it's abnormal to be polygynous. And then I thought about one of my favorite movies, my Chadwick Boseman passed away, but he was the Black Panther. And a lot of people don't know the story behind his guards, the Dora Milaje.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. The Dora Milaje were and are still looked at as his guards, right? But the Dora Milaje were not just guards, they were his ceremonial wives.
Yeah.
So they protected him, and when they would retire, another door would come. But they left that part out of his story because we must abnormalize, polygyny and normalize monogamy. Yeah. So Stan Lee is not pulling this stuff. He wasn't pulling this stuff out of nowhere. He was pulling these things from history. Yeah. But he knew these big studios, well, look, we got to get rid of that polygyny. They're just guards.
Yeah.
We're not going to put wives in here. Yeah. Because they have their own narrative.
Most definitely.
But I think for men, and I'm not a man, I've never been one, but I've noticed that when I told my father, for example, he had a different reaction than my mother had. Now, she didn't raise me. He barely did. But I told them. And my dad totally got it. It was no issue. He said, as long as you're happy. My mother, not so much. But I appreciated him getting it. And I didn't have to feel awkward and feel like I had to explain all this extra stuff and get overly emotional with it. He understood. But I knew that he would understand it as a man.
Let me speak on this really quickly, though, because there's a lot more to it than just a general. Let's talk about monogamy and really how it came about and how it's the norm now. It's only been over the last couple hundred years, not even a full 200 years. But monogamy pretty much means a man is legally responsible for one wife and what comes from that wife, meaning the children. Now, monogamy does not prohibit concubines, girlfriends, boyfriends, jump downs, mistresses, any of this stuff. Okay, that's just monogamy. And we live in a society of serial monogamists. So you marry, divorce, marry, divorce, marry, divorce all over the place. Okay, so we're looking at monogamy in action, and it doesn't look like it's working. But again, we're not anti-monogamy. We're just pro-morals. Okay, so whether that's monogamy, polygyny, what have you, it's important to understand that. Now, Nancy Cott, she's a Harvard professor. She's a Harvard professor. She has a book called Public Vows. And she really went into the building of the United States as a nation and its identity and how and why they chose monogamy to differentiate themselves from the rest of the world. Because monogamy or polygyny was heavily practiced here. I mean, my grandfather said to have 3 wives and went to one of his wives' house down in Mississippi before he passed. And that's where he passed at, right? So he said to have it, and I look at my family history and I'm looking through different people. I'm like, wait, this is these wives right here? You know what I'm saying? This is what we was on? I'm like, cool, I'm at home. Welcome back, right? But Nancy Cott really breaks it down because it's really part of a white supremacist ideology that even goes back to really pushing it as though it's the norm when actually it's not. And what monogamy does in general is it blew me away because when I was first reading more about polygyny and really studying it, is that it protects the man. But monogamy does not protect the woman, never has. Monogamy protects the man, okay? Meaning that it says, nope, this is the only legal thing you have to do with these bastard kids, because that's what the term means. You're not married to the woman. Bastard's a long, old term. That means you're not responsible for that. All right, anything that comes from there, nope, you're just responsible right here. So monogamous like Jesse Jackson, all right, like Bill Clinton, like other figures all throughout the country. I don't care if you're talking about religious figures like Jimmy Swaggart and all that with his prostitutes. This is monogamy in action. So we talk about what's more natural. Well, if you look at the makeup of man and woman, we're not the same. We come from the same source. All right. You know, we are, but we're actually very different when you look at the amount of semen or sperm men produce on a daily versus the number of eggs women are born with when they're born, or getting to a certain amount or age where you can no longer produce children. All right. For women, for example, hit menopause versus men. I mean, just looking at that biologically, then you're going back 100 years and seeing how different things were. So if you look at things and we project our thoughts now and we put it back as though we're, you know, experts at humanity when we have no idea past our face. You know, we're like, what you mean have a home birth or a baby at home? Well, having a baby in a hospital is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's brand new. What are you talking about? We've been around a long time. You know, so having to go somewhere like it's a surgery and have all these medicines and things and all kind of stuff is brand new to us. So if we don't even know that or the history of the educational system, but then we definitely try to talk about marriage and something being the norm and what's better, then we foolish. When you look at marriage and you have the best man in marriage, right? Somebody's the best man at your wedding, he handles everything for the groom. If we don't understand that comes from the best man for the job, meaning that we're going to go kidnap this woman, you need to pick the best man for the job. That's your best man. Y'all go ahead, kidnap her and make her your wife.
That part is new to me. I didn't know that one.
Yeah, this word comes from European culture. Wow. Look up best man for the job and the best man, where that actual term comes from, because I'm going to need the best person for the job, my best man, to help me go kidnap from this family and make her a part of our family. That was common in European culture, so much so that we just follow tradition. And this best man, he's going ahead and organizing the bachelor party. It's a whole lot more to the history of it than that. So understanding that with monogamy, and again, we're not anti-monogamy. We just let you know it don't really seem to be working well. All right, so we need to at least give all the options out there. So if men, for example, you had Kobe, right? You know, and of course he's passed, but his situation that occurred with him or having extramarital affairs, something that's common in the NBA. Their wives expect this type of stuff. It'd be wrong not to expect it. Or you have Kevin Hart's wife, and she was like, look, just don't embarrass me and have stuff go public. And it did. It went public and all that. That was the agreement. You have Will Smith and the entanglements and all that type of situation, right? This was known for the longest circle. That's how they operate. This not new. She was just messing with young boys that didn't keep their mouth shut. You know, that's part of their whole stuff. And that's not dealing with polygyny. That's just dealing with the whole idea of what we consider marriage. Where 20 years ago, when they planted a lot of these seeds and cultivating these seeds with gay marriage, and now that's like, oh yeah, of course that just makes sense. Like, not, you know, and I'm not going to bring a religious argument for or against it. I'm just going to say, listen, scientifically speaking, if we say if all people did it, then we have this result, you can easily decide what nature feels is going to be right or wrong. So if everybody was gay, practice that, well, human beings and species would be gone in one generation. That probably means it's not a good idea or bad. Here are 3 ways outstanding personal relationships can help you.
One is by following us on our social medias. Follow us on IG at Outstanding Relationships and on Facebook and YouTube at Outstanding Personal Relationships. And make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell.
Number 2, make sure you head over to outstandingpersonalrelationships.com and subscribe to the email list. From there, you will get downloads as well as updates, any and all updates. And you also get an update on the release of our new book, Let's Talk Polygyny, Uncensored.
Number 3, if you are serious about polygyny relationships and really developing fulfillment and happiness, make sure you register for our Relationship Mastery Inner Circle, which is members only, which includes downloads, it includes access to us live on a weekly basis. So that's at outstandingpersonalrelationships.com/RM. We'll see you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Peace.